In today's video, I teach you how to build this miter station. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Patriot DIY channel. Now that we finally got some power in our shop, it's time to start building. And the first thing we're going to get started with is our workbenches. As you can see right now, we're just using an old temporary workbench that I've had for years. But the plan is to build a nice long miter station along this wall here. And that's what we're going to get started on in this video. If that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. That really helps us out. Now, as you're following along in the video, if you want to build this miter station for yourself, I will put a link to the digital plans in the description below. Now, let's get started. Now, the bones of this miter station is going to be built out of just a simple 2x4 frame with a birch plywood top and bottom. We are going to be going back and adding drawers and shelves and things like that into it later, and we'll also be using birch for those. All right, guys, our miter station is going to have an 8-foot bench on the left side of the miter saw and a 5-foot bench on the right side of the miter saw. And the first thing we need to do is get our lumber cut down to size. So we're going to be using our cut sheets to help us out with that. You can find the cut sheets in the plans in the description below. All right, first thing we're going to do is get all this lumber cut down to size. We'll go ahead and pre-cut everything. And as you can see, I got my little helper in the shop with me today. And then we can go ahead and start assembling our legs. We're going to cut them down to size and then glue them together at a 3.5-inch offset. And then reinforce it with some screws. And we'll do that same thing for all of our legs. Next, we're going to go ahead and drill some pocket holes into our cross supports for the top and bottom of the frame. This part's obviously optional. If you don't care about screws being shown, you can just screw those supports in from the outside. And we'll go ahead and get the frame laid out, and we're going to clamp everything together to hold it while we screw everything together. Next, we're going to go ahead and attach our legs, and we're just going to be screwing those together from the inside with 4 screws each. Now at this point in the assembly, our table is actually upside down with the top of the table on the floor. So we can grab our bottom frame and go ahead and fit that in place. Now for this bottom, we do have to put in a couple screws from the outside of the wood, but that's okay. We're going to go back and fill those with wood filler later. Now we can go ahead and flip the assembly over, and we'll follow that same procedure for the smaller side of our workbench. And go ahead and fill those exposed screw holes with some wood filler, and then give everything a good sanding. It's important that you sand the top of that frame really well so that once you put your top on there, it sits flush. Now we'll get everything moved over into place. And then we'll install the center part of our workbench. This is going to be set 3.5 inches lower than the two sides so that the bed of the miter saw is even with the tops of the rest of the bench. All right guys, we got our frame together and I think it's looking awesome. Next thing to do is just get all our plywood cut for the tops and bottoms, and then we're going to put on some leveling feet and level everything up. Then we're going to install our leveling feet. Now, depending on your situation, if you're on a concrete floor, it's very rare that you have a perfectly level concrete floor or perfectly straight lumber for that matter. So these little leveling feet come in handy. I will put a link to these and everything else in the description below if you want to check that out. Then we'll go ahead and start measuring out and cutting the plywood for the tops of the workbench. To do that, we're going to be using our Win track saw. Now, we'll put links to all these tools in the description below if you want to get them for yourself. All right guys, now that we got all our tops cut, it's time to glue everything up. We're using 2 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood laminated together for the top. So let's get to gluing everything up, and then once it dries, we can cut it down to its final size. You're going to want to make sure you go ahead and put plenty of glue on here and spread it out nice and even. I'm just using a scrap piece of wood to spread this out. And then you can put your other sheet on top and match everything up. And this part doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to go back later and trim it down to its final size. Then we'll go ahead and put in plenty of screws from the bottom to hold everything together. Now when you're doing this, you are going to want to make sure you plan ahead for where you think that T-track might go so you don't have any screws in way of that T-track. We'll go ahead and trim down the middle part of our workbench to size, give it a good sanding, and then fit it into place. Now to attach the top of the workbench to the frame, we did drill some pocket holes into the frame, so we're just going to clamp that down and then go ahead and drive in all of our pocket screws. Let me just show you guys what I'm doing. I get over here to put the top on, and I realize I put the top upside down. My pocket holes are going the wrong way. So, gotta go back, add new pocket holes. Going the correct direction. Oh well. And we'll go ahead and put our flush trim bit in the router and trim those edges down flush. Then we're going to put on some edge banding. Now this is optional, but it does give it a nice look and it protects the sides of the plywood. For these, we're just using some 1x2 poplar boards, and we intentionally cut these a little bit long so that we can trim them down later with our pool saw. And we're going to attach that with brad nails and then go back and fill it in with some wood filler. And then we'll sand everything down. And we're going to go back with our router and a round over bit to round over those edges of the trim. Now we're getting ready to put that T-track in, and to do that we're going to go ahead and put the miter saw on the bench. That way we can get everything squared up and make sure we can get that T-track exactly where we want it. Now you're going to need a nice long straight edge. I'm just using the track from my track saw. And we're just going to put a piece of painter's tape on that line where we're going to be cutting in our dado. We're also gluing on a sacrificial piece of wood on both ends to prevent any tear out. We're going to be cutting this in with our router and a 3/4 inch straight bit. That painter's tape does a good job of making sure that you're not going to have any splintering on the top, and those sacrificial boards did a great job of making sure we didn't have any tear out on the ends. Now we can go ahead and test fit our T-track. It fits nice, and you want to make sure that it's set just a hair below the surface of the wood. For the finish on our tabletop, we decided to go with a traditional shellac. I decided to use a foam brush to apply this shellac. It gives a nice even finish. We are going to go back and sand in between coats, and we ended up putting 3 coats on this tabletop. We're ready to install our T-track. The track we're using is from ClearStyle. Now to fasten these down, we're just going to be using some 3/4 inch black cabinet screws. This T-track comes in 4-foot sections, so we are going to have to cut it down, and you can just do that with your miter saw. All right guys, there's one thing I almost forgot to do, and that's install these Kreg measuring tapes. So what we're going to do is we're going to dado out a very small slot for this to sit down into the tabletop just above the T-track. And then once we get the saw on here and get everything centered up, we'll be able to put these tapes on. Now for our measuring tape, we're just barely taking off the surface of that plywood to make sure that that tape sits down just below the surface. Now we can put our miter saw back in place and line everything up. Once we get it right where we want it, we'll go ahead and screw it down to the bench, and then we can take some measurements so we can get that measuring tape perfectly aligned. All right guys, I think we've reached a good stopping point. What we have here is a nice simple miter station. I do plan on putting cabinets and drawers in here. That's why I didn't put a bottom shelf on there. But if you're just looking for a nice simple miter station, I hope this video has helped you out. If you want to stay tuned for the rest of this build, make sure you don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. We're also going to have a link in the description below to the plan for this bench that we're calling the simple miter station, as well as the upgraded version with all the cabinets and drawers and stuff in there. So make sure you check that out. If you have any questions or critiques or anything like that, I'd love to hear it. Make sure you leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.